أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. So we have had already two discussions in this part of the series. The first of the discussion was a very important discussion, which I believe if those who haven't heard that lecture, at least the first lecture, you need to listen to be able to understand these subsequent discussions we want to have. So the first discussion which we had was where we discussed why do historical narratives differ. And the point I was trying to drive through was this, that a lot of historical narratives will have evolution in them, okay? With time and space, with different places, the narrative keeps on changing. And then in the second lecture, we came and said that, but that's not exclusive to historical narratives, rather it's a universal issue. It involves everything, especially in the Islamic disciplines. You will see in different subjects, you will have these evolution of the narratives. Okay, these were two discussions we had. We could have a lot of other discussions which are introductory, but I feel inshallah, some other time in the future we can discuss the types of books, the types of riwayats which we have and all whatnot. That's something which we can discuss sometime in the future. What we want to discuss today is, now we will start the actual discussion for another 5-6 subsequent lectures, if not more, depending on the time we take for each lecture. We want to now discuss the personalities within the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and the events related to their martyrdom, as we say, chronologically. Okay, so we will be discussing these events chronologically. Before I get into the topic, a few important points which I want to, some of them I've already mentioned, I just want to reiterate again so that we are on the same page. Number one, something I have emphasized from the beginning and I'm emphasizing again. My role here is not to come and tell you what is reliable, what is not reliable, what is right, what is wrong. I am solely presenting the historical accounts and the historical narratives out there, but throughout different centuries, so that you can know the evolution of these narratives. Further than that, as I mentioned, that these lectures are for those people who are into research. You should be able to go find out that what is a methodology which you're going to adapt to find out what is reliable and what is not reliable. Scholars do discuss this, and this is, I leave it upon the listener. That is point number one. Point number two, again, related to point number one, I am not going to discuss anywhere about the sanad, okay? So you will not see me saying that the chain of narrators is right and the chain of narrators is wrong, and here it's weak, and here it's sahih, and here it's authentic. No, that's not the responsibility of these lectures. As much as I have my own reservations for this whole sanad methodology, which I've somehow alluded to in my previous lectures, so I will not be getting into that. That's point number two. Point number three is the whole issue of the sources. Okay, so which sources are reliable, which sources are not reliable? Again, scholars do discuss this. They have a criteria. Again, this is up to you to get into these discussions. Scholars have very much discussed on these issues, and that is upon you to go and look into what is a reliable source, what is a non-reliable source, what are fabricated sources. Okay, scholars do talk about these discussions, mythical sources, imaginative sources, and all these classifications scholars do have. That's upon you to go into those discussions. And finally, what I've done is, so we will only be discussing the events related to the martyrdom of these personalities, okay, on the day of Ashura. There's a lot of research still remaining. So before Ashura, what happened after Ashura. So if you, for example, the personality we're going to discuss today is Ali Akbar. Ali Akbar alayhi salam can be discussed all the way from Medina till Karbala, okay, which we are not going to discuss that portion. That requires a lot of time, requires a lot of that is there in the books, but what I'm intending is to present it chronologically, and that takes a lot of time, okay? So that's somehow some research for later time, inshallah, if Allah gives the tawfiq. So that is something I'm not covering. That is number one. And number two, so this is something I have to somehow make accept this in the beginning, on the onset, that I'm a human, okay? What I've done is, as much as possible, I have tried gathering all the information possible about their personality for the day of Ashura. I've tried looking at a lot of the books, but if I've overlooked some of the sources, if I've overlooked, or if I edit something, if I've edited something, that is, I'm a human after all. I can make mistakes. So if you find out that there's something I've overlooked, please do point out. You can write it on the comment section or even contact me also, okay? So this is something I felt it was necessary for me to mention before we get into the discussion. Now, we are going to discuss, as I mentioned, Hazrat Ali Akbar today, and we'll be discussing the events related to his martyrdom chronologically. And the reason I keep on emphasizing this, the reason we are doing this, is for you to see how the narrative evolves with time, okay? So we're going to start all the way from the 2nd century, and we're going to come till date, inshallah. Now, have I Have I looked into all the books? No, especially the later books, which are those scholars, some of those scholars would call the unreliable books. I have not looked into all those contemporary books, okay? It needs a lot of time. So there are a lot of contemporary books being written and a lot of new narratives are coming in also. I have not looked into all those books, okay? But what I've done is I've collected the major part of it, which gives you a picture of how the narrative has evolved. So we start all the way from the beginning in the 2nd century where Abu Mikhnaf comes in. Now I'm starting from Abu Mikhnaf in the 2nd century, as you are all aware, that we don't have Abu Mikhnaf's maqtal today. We don't have Abu Mikhnaf's history with us today. The one which is available outside is a 6th, 7th century edition. It's not the actual Abu Mikhnaf, although there's someone trying to claim that this is the actual. It has a lot of mistakes in it. So we're not using that. What some scholars have done in history is, for example, Sheikh Muhammad Hadi Yusuf al-Gharawi, who I've been quoting in the previous discussions, what he has done is he has taken Abu Mikhnaf's narrative from the different sources. For example, from Tabari, Tarikh al-Tabari, from Kitab al-Irshad of Sheikh Mufid. These are the sources which have collected Abu Mikhnaf's narrative. He has taken from there and compiled it into a book. And that's the book I'm using. It's called Waqi'atut Taf. Okay, it's translated in English also. So if you refer to it, you will see that what I'm quoting is there in the English book also. It's called Event of Taf. So we start all the way from 157 Hijrah. This is mid 2nd century where Abu Mikhnaf dies. So this is Abu Mikhnaf. The first thing Abu Mikhnaf mentions, and this is something you will see in the earlier sources and the later sources, we have a difference of narrative. So Abu Mikhnaf says that Ali Akbar kana awwalu qatilin min bani Abi Talib. He was the first one from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam to go towards the battlefield. Okay, as we go later, you will see the narrative changing. Now, further than that, he doesn't give any details of how the farewell took place and all whatnot. He straight away then gets into the fight of Ali Akbar. Now, it's a one-liner fight which he discusses, and then eventually he discusses فَقَطَعُوهُ بِأَسْيَافِهِمْ. Now, I'm mentioning this as we go further. When we reach to Allama Majlisi in the 11th century, you will notice that the narrative changes a bit. Here, the fight happens, the battle happens, then the narrative of Abu Mikhnaf says that they cut him with their swords. Okay, so they basically hit them they hit him with their swords. That's the narrative of Abu Mikhnaf. Now, again, this portion very important. فَجَاءَهُ الْحُسَيْنِ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ. Imam Hussein came in the presence of Ali Akbar in the battlefield. As we go Ibn Sa'd, you will see that the narrative changes. Imam comes in the presence of Ali Akbar. He is now in his last moments. Imam says, قَتَلَ اللَّهُ قَوْمًا قَتَلُوكَ يَا بُنَيَّ. Okay, oh my son, Allah killed the community which has killed you. So it's a kind of a dua which Imam makes against the people who killed Ali Akbar. Yeah, it's a bad dua the way we say. Yeah, but it's a one statement only, that Allah kill your killers because they violated the sanctity of Allah and the Prophet. And then Imam makes that famous statement, "Ala dunya ba'daka al-afa." Oh Ali, after you the dunya is of no use, basically. Okay. Here the narrative now goes further by saying that وَخَرَجَتْ إِمْرَأَةٌ مُسْرِعَةً تُنَادِي. The lady's name is not mentioned, but it's very clear that it's Bibi Zainab. Bibi Zainab alayhi salam comes out from the tent as if going towards where Imam Hussein alayhi salam had gone. Now, when you go further in the narratives, you will notice that they change this narrative and they say that Bibi Zainab left before Imam Hussein. So the earlier narrative of Abu Mikhnaf says Imam Hussein went, okay, he was at the body of Ali Akbar, and then Bibi Zainab came out and then she dropped herself on Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So when Imam realized she is there, فَجَاءَهَا الْحُسَيْنِ فَأَخَذَ بِيَدِهَا فَرَدَّهَا إِلَى الْفُسْطَاطِ. Imam took her hand and returned her back to the tents. And then Imam tells the remaining Bani Hashim that احملوا أخاكم, take your brother back to the tent. Okay, so this is the narrative of Abu Mikhnaf. This is 2nd century, mid 2nd century. Then you come to Ibn Sa'd. Ibn Sa'd in his Tabaqat. Ibn Sa'd, as you know, we have discussed him earlier also. He's a Sunni historian, very much relied by the Sunnis also. He adds two more things to his narrative. One thing he adds is the people of Umar ibn Sa'd come and give Aman Nama. Okay, Aman Nama meaning they come and give a proposal of peace to Ali Akbar, because Ali Akbar somehow was related through his mother. So his grandmother was apparently the daughter of Abu Sufyan. Because of this relationship, again, the tribal relationships, they come and give him a proposal of peace, that okay, we are ready to give you a peace proposal, come to us. And naturally, Ali Akbar refuses. This is number one. Ibn Sa'd mentions. A second thing which Ibn Sa'd mentions differs with Abu Mikhnaf. Notice, Abu Mikhnaf said that Imam came in the presence of Ali Akbar in the battlefield. Here he says, فَحُمِلَ فَوُضِعَ قَرِيبًا مِنْ أَبِي. Okay, so Imam doesn't come to him, rather the body of Ali Akbar is taken and kept in front of the father. And then Imam makes the same dua and the same statement, عَلَى الدُّنْيَا بَعْدَكَ الْأَفَا. Then Imam makes another statement which is not there. There's another thing which happens which is not there in Abu Mikhnaf's narrative. وَضَمَّهُ أَبُوهُ إِلَيْهِ حَتَّى مَاتَ. So Ali Akbar, then Imam starts hugging him to a level then until Ali Akbar passes away. Okay, this is something which we didn't see in the narrative. Now, one thing we see more in Ibn Sa'ad's narrative is this dua against them. So in the earlier narrative it was قَتَلَ اللَّهُ قَوْمًا قَتَلُوكَ. Okay, oh Ali, Allah killed those who killed you. That's all. Here the dua now increases. Okay, now it's a strange dua, but this is there mentioned by Ibn Sa'ad. The dua is like this: Allahumma fahbis anhum qatar as-sama. Oh Allah, block the rain from them. Wamna'hum barakat al-ard. Oh Allah, block from them all the blessings you're going to give them from the earth. Now, فَإِن مَتَّعْتَهُمْ إِلَى حِينٍ. Oh Allah, if you're going to give them your blessings, then فَفَرِّقْهُمْ شِيَعًا. Okay, so first you block your blessings from them. And if you're going to bless them and give them your blessings, then make them divided and make them into fragments and into groups. And then also make the leaders not be happy with them. That means they should always be followed by the leaders. The leaders should not be happy with them. Notice the dua or the bad dua basically increases in this narrative. This is Ibn Sa'ad in the early 3rd century. You come to early 4th century, Ibn A'tham in his Al-Futuh. Okay, now Ibn A'tham, as we've mentioned even before, there's a difference of opinion within Shias and Sunnis as to whether he's a Sunni and a Shia, which we don't get into that. But now it's the first time now we see. Early 4th century, before Ali Akbar goes to the battlefield, Imam does the dua. Okay, so in the earlier renditions, in the earlier narrative, it was Imam does that bad dua against them, the dua against them after Ali Akbar is killed. Here, Imam is now doing the dua before Ali Akbar goes to the battlefield. And then Imam makes that statement, which we now for the first time see this statement. Allahumma shhad ala ha'ula al-qawm. Oh Allah, be the witness that a person who is going to fight them is very similar to the Prophet, khalqan wa khulqan wa mantaqan bi rasulik sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Okay, he is very similar to the Prophet in his akhlaq, in his physical appearance also. Then one more thing adds up in Ibn A'tham. Imam now turns to Ibn Sa'ad, Umar ibn Sa'ad, and then he shouts out to him and tells him, Ma laka, Umar ibn Sa'ad, what do you have with my son? Why are you up to killing up my son? Then Imam does dua against him also. Okay, قَطَعَ اللَّهُ رَحِمَكَ وَلَا بَارِكْ لَكَ فِي أَمْرِكَ. Okay, Allah should sever your ties of your family. Okay, Allah should not bless you in your affairs. And the du'as against Ibn Sa'ad goes on. Umar ibn Sa'ad goes on. Okay, and then finally Imam then raises his voice to recite this verse of the Quran in Surah Al Imran, verse number 33 and 34. Okay, Inna Allah astafa Adam wa Nuhan wa ala Ibrahim until the end. This is what Imam recites. And then Ali Akbar goes to the battlefield, and the narrative is the same then. Okay, this is the earlier 4th century. Mid 4th century, now you have Abu al-Faraj Isfahani. Abu al-Faraj Isfahani, by majority accounts, he's a Zaydi scholar. In his Maqatil al-Talibiyin, he adds a few things again in his narrative. So I'm mentioning this, these are small things as additions, but you will notice that these small things basically add up to become a whole narrative. So when Ali Akbar now is going, in the earlier narratives, there was no description of how he was going, what was the state of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Here now, for the first time now, we are seeing that what's the state of Imam Hussein. So Arkhal Hussein alayhi salam aynayhi fabaka. Okay, Imam became very sad and he started crying when Ali alayhi salam was going. And then the same statement that he is somebody similar to the Prophet. Now, this is the first time now we are seeing in the 4th century now that the mention of thirst is coming in. Okay, so he goes to fight and then he comes back and he tells his father al-atash. That's all. As we go further, we'll see the narrative increases. He comes to the father and tells the father, Al-Atash, I'm thirsty. So the father turns back to him, notice, okay, again, something which is, you're going to see further, some miraculous things happen. The father tells the son, Isbar Habibi, be patient, okay? In a few minutes, in a few moments, the Holy Prophet ﷺ will quench your thirst. Okay, and then he goes back to fight. Now, there's a mention here. The reason is because in the later versions you will notice that a spear is mentioned in the heart. Here, حتى رمي بسهم فوقع في حلقه فخرقه. Okay, he was hit by an arrow and it pierced his throat. Okay, that's how the death is being ascribed and described in the middle 4th century. And then he turns back to his father and he shouts out to his father, Ya abata alayka salam. Oh my father, salams be on you. Hada jaddi Rasulullah yuqri'uka salam. This is my grandfather, he is giving you salam. So it's as if Ali Akbar now is seeing the grandfather in his last moments and is telling his father that my grandfather has come to meet me, and is telling us all that we should go meet him very soon. This is Abu al-Faraj in the mid 4th century. Okay, now the last portion of the 4th century, we have Kamil al-Ziyarat now. Okay, Ibn Qulaway passes away in 367 Hijrah. Okay, so it's the last portion of the 4th century. He quotes a ziyarah from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam for Hazrat Ali Akbar. Okay, so look at the statements. ثم سر إلى قبر علي ibn al-Husayn. Okay, then go to the qabr and the grave of Ali ibn al-Husayn, meaning Ali Akbar, and recite this ziyarah. Okay, so what I'm now interested in is in this statement. This statement normally we hear for Hazrat Ali Asghar, but Kamil al-Ziyarah, Ibn Qawlawi quotes it for Hazrat Ali Akbar also. So Imam cries for him a lot, and then he says, يَرْفَعُ دَمَكَ بِكَفِّهِ إِلَىٰ أَعْنَانِ السَّمَاءِ لَا يَرْجِعُ مِنْهُ قَطْرًا. Okay, so Imam took the blood of Ali Akbar on his hand and he pointed it towards the sky, and as if he threw it towards the sky, and not a single drop of blood came back. Can you see this? So this is a narrative now increasing. This was not there in the earlier sources. This is coming now in the later 4th century. Sheikh Saduq, end of the 4th century. So he dies in 381 Hijrah. One more thing which he mentions, he has a Maqtal al-Hussein. He mentions numbers now. So that's a new phenomenon which we're seeing now. The numbers are being mentioned. That when Ali Akbar went to fight again, فَرَجَعَ فَقَتَلَ حَتَّى قَتَلَ مِنْهُمْ 44 رَجُلًا. Again, so numbers now, as you go further, you might see 120 and the numbers increasing. Okay, so these numbers now, you see another phenomenon coming into the narrative that these were the people he killed. 44 people is what he killed, Ali Akbar. This was till the 4th century. Come early 5th century now, you have Sheikh Mufid. Sheikh Mufid passes away in 413 Hijrah. Okay, so he's early 5th century. He's the first one now to introduce the age of Ali Akbar now. This is something we don't see earlier than this. Now suddenly we see this in the 5th century. There's a narrative going around about the age of Ali Akbar. How old was he? Okay, so look at the statement of Sheikh Mufid. He says, وَكَانَ مِنْ أَصْبَحِ النَّاسِ وَجْهًا. He was very radiant and very bright in his face. Now notice, he doesn't mention the exact age. He says, وَلَهُ يَوْمَئِذٍ بِضْعَ عَشْرَ سَنَةً. So he was 10 plus years. So 10 plus years means 11 years, 12 years, 15 years, 17 years, 19 years. You will see scholars differing, okay? So he was less than 20 and he was more than 10. That's the version of Sheikh Mufid. You come to the 6th century. You come to the 6th century now. Tabrasi, okay, in his I'lam al-Wara, comes and now specifies the age now. So وَلَهُ يَوْمَئِذٍ تِسْعَ عَشَرَ سَنَةً. So Sheikh Mufid says he's more than 10, less than 20. Here now he comes and says he is 19 years of age. Okay, this is the first time now we see the exact age coming in. Now, this was the mid 6th century. So Tabrasi died in 548 Hijrah. Okay, so basically mid 6th century. Then we come to mid 7th century. This is where Sayyid ibn Tawus comes in his Luhuf. So Sayyid ibn Tawus passes away in 664 Hijrah. Okay, so it's towards the mid and later 7th century. Now, another narrative which we see for the first time is فَاسْتَأْذَنَ أَبَاهُ فِي الْقِتَالِ فَأَذِنَ لَهُ. Okay, this is something we hadn't seen earlier, that Ali Akbar comes to ask. So before that, فَلَمَّا لَمْ يَبْقَ مَعَهُ سِوَى أَهْلِ بَيْتِ. Yes. So the Ahlul Bayt were remaining. Until here, we see that the narrative has been the same, that Ali Akbar was the first one from the Ahlul Bayt to go to fight. فَاسْتَأْذَنَ أَبَاهُ فِي الْقِتَالِ فَأَذِنَ لَهُ. He asked for permission from his father, and his father immediately gave him the permission, without any ifs and buts, as we see further. Okay, this was a permission given straight away, a narrative which we don't see earlier. Okay, now another thing now, a description is added of what's the state of Imam Hussein. So if you remember Abu al-Faraj, he had mentioned that Imam was in a sad state and crying. Here Sayyid ibn Tawus adds another statement. It says نَظَرَ إِلَيْهِ نَظَرَ آيَسٍ مِّنْهُ. Okay, he was looking at him as if he has lost all hope, meaning he had lost all hope that Ali is going to come back. Okay, that's how Imam was looking at him. This was something which was not there earlier. Sayyid ibn Tawus now adds this narrative. Now, you remember earlier we had mentioned that the mention was only of thirst. Okay, now notice how thirst is being described here. When Ali Akbar comes back to his father, he turns back to his father and tells him, Ya abati al-atash qad qatalani wa thiqlu al-hadid qad ajhadani. Okay, that's something now we see a new narrative coming in the 7th century now. That, oh my father, thirst has killed me. Notice in the earlier narrative it was, oh my father, I'm thirsty. But here now, Ali Akbar is telling the father that thirst has killed me. And the weight of the armor, so the armor I'm wearing has basically made me tired, I'm exhausted. So can you give me some water now? A narrative which was not there earlier. Okay? Now, And the last statement which Sayyid ibn Tawus adds, which was not there again earlier, in the earlier statements we had that Imam Hussein comes in the presence of Ali Akbar and then he makes the dua against the people, and that's all. Here now, فجاء الحسين عليه السلام حتى وقف عليه ووضع خده على خده. Okay, so Imam comes to the body of Ali Akbar and then he puts his cheek on the cheek of Ali Akbar. Now, this is important because when you listen to the majalis and to the lectures in the mosque, you will see this, the scholars will mention that there are two places in Karbala where Imam kept the cheek on the cheek of a martyr. One is Ali Akbar and one is Joan. Okay, so this is coming in the 7th century for Ali Akbar. Sayyid ibn Tawus now brings this narrative. Okay, and then the battle is mentioned and we are not interested in that. Now, come to 680 Hijrah. Ibn Numa al-Hilli in his Muthir al-Ahzan, he is the contemporary of Sayyid ibn Tawus, all from Hilla. Okay, he now is the first one to come up with the narrative that Ali Akbar was not the first one from the Ahlul Bayt. Rather, there were some from the Ahlul Bayt who were already martyred, and then Ali Akbar goes further. So he's in the middle somewhere. Okay, so Ali Akbar comes after a few members of Ahlul Bayt had already been martyred. Number one. Number two, he says أكثر من 20 سنين. So another narrative now. So you saw that Sheikh Mufid's version, he was 10 plus years. You saw I'lam al-Wara's version where he said he's 19 years. Okay, now here the version comes in that he is more than 20 years old. This is the end of 7th century. Now we see his age going more than 20 now. Okay, and then the remaining is similar to the others also. This is still the 7th century. Now we come to early 10th century, and this is where now the narratives start increasing now. And that is why some scholars like Sheikh Shahri, he will pause here and say until the 7th century we find them reliable sources. Further than this now becomes questionable sources, and they're not very reliable sources. Okay? Again, I'm not getting into this discussion, I'm just mentioning some of the opinions out there. You come to the early 10th century now, 910 Hijrah. Okay, you have an Afghani, Iranian, now Iran at that time was huge, okay? It used to encompass the whole Khorasan was huge. So an Iranian speaker, Mullah Wa'id Kashifi, he writes a book, Rawdat al-Shuhada, which became very famous. Rather, it's a very famous book till date. And it's a famous book till date, not only in the Iranian culture, but even with the outside Iran also. He comes up with a new narrative now. So the first one, in the earlier narratives, we were told that Ali Akbar was the first one to get martyred. Ibn Numa says that he was one of the middle ones. He says now that only 3 children of Imam Hussein alayhi salam were remaining. Okay, so notice, he said, Pas Imam Hussein alayhi salam mand was se pisareu. Okay, so it was Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his 3 children who were remaining. This is the time now comes where, this is the time now Ali Akbar comes in, but he adds more now. He doesn't say Ali Akbar straight away decides to go to the battlefield. Rather, he says that when these 3 children were remaining with Imam Hussein, the version Mullah Kashif is trying to give as if that Imam didn't want his children to go to the battlefield. Okay, so Imam himself prepares for the battlefield. He starts wearing his armor and wants to go to the battlefield. Now, when Ali Akbar sees this, he turns back to his father and starts pleading that, oh father, don't let me stay with these oppressors. I want to go fight and allow me to go fight the battle before you. Okay, so this is a narrative we are seeing in the early 10th century, which we didn't see earlier. Okay, number one, it was only the 3 children of Imam Hussein remaining. Number two, Imam Hussein wanted to go himself. This is where Ali Akbar then comes and tells his father, okay, let me go first before you should go. Okay, now another narrative which we see now coming in is here. You notice that earlier narratives didn't mention anything about it. Sayyid ibn Tawus mentioned that when he came to ask for permission, he was given the permission immediately. Here now, you see a total opposite version now. It's like as if Imam Hussein alayhi salam and the sisters and the daughters, they came out of the tent pleading Ali Akbar that don't go. Okay? So, notice the version. Imam Hussein wa khaharan wa dukhtaranash as khaymeha birun dovide dar dast wa pay Ali Akbar uftadan. Okay? So these, Imam Hussein himself also, and the sisters and the daughters, they fell on the feet of Ali Akbar, telling him, please don't go fight. Okay, rather Mullah Kashif's version says that Imam would not even grant him permission, opposite to the earlier narrative which we saw. Okay, so Ali Akbar started weeping and crying and imploring and asking his father excessively until the father was affected and he gives him the permission to go. Now, it's the first time, okay, all these years, it's earlier 10th century, we see the the word mother coming in, without the mention of Layla. Layla's name will come in the 14th century, okay? Here the word mother comes in. That means the mother's name was not there in the earlier narrative, okay? Madar wa khaharanash dar rikabu awikhtan, okay? It is the mother and the sisters now, okay, who were now clinging to Ali Akbar that he should not go. Number one. Number two, وَبِجَايَ آب خُون أَزْ دِيدَ مِرِخْتًا, something we didn't see earlier. They started crying blood instead of tears. Okay, this is Mullah Kashifi now coming up with his version. Now, Mullah Kashifi then comes and says, "U jawani bud hijda saleh." Okay, so we had already Sheikh Mufid's years, how many years he was, then we had 19 years, and then we had more than 20. Now we have in the early 10th century that he was 18 years old, and this has become famous now. Okay, Kari al-Jawan and Atara Baras and all this you hear, it's a 10th century narrative. Okay, again, I'm saying that I'm not up to saying what is right and what is wrong. These are the narratives which we are reading. Now, another thing which Mullah Kashifi adds, which nobody added earlier than him, was this, is that when he came to fight, he started asking people to fight, and nobody came. Okay, Kasi bi mubarizati unayumad. Okay, he was so brave that nobody came to fight him, something which we didn't see earlier. Now, apparently, Mullah Kashifi now comes up with a new narrative, which again, earlier than him, we don't see. He says that Ali Akbar came twice to ask for water. This was something we didn't see earlier. Earlier, it was that he came to ask for water. Imam tells him, have patience, okay, and he goes back to fight. Apparently, Mullah Kashifi proposes that no, he came twice. So the first time when he came to ask for water, okay, Imam khak as a lab wa dahane pot kard. Okay, so Imam cleaned his mouth out of from the dust, and then gave him his, now can you see now, supernatural understandings are coming in. This is exactly what scholars were referring to, in, as I mentioned in my earlier discussions, that supernatural events now will increase as we go further. So Imam gives his ring to Ali Akbar to suck it and to put it in his mouth, and his thirst gets quenched. Okay? Okay, so dardahane way nahad tab demiki wa tashnagiya way taskin yaft. Okay, so he was quenched from his thirst, and then he goes back to fight. Now, another thing, again, we see the narrative, again, the numbers coming in. Okay, the numbers were 44 then. Now, here we see that when Ali Akbar goes to fight, it's 2,000 horsemen are pulled back. Okay, these numbers we didn't see earlier. Here now we are seeing these numbers that he was so brave that 2,000 horsemen, he managed to pull them back. Okay, now, then the same, he comes back and Al-Atash and all whatnot, and he goes to fight and he gets martyred. Now, when he gets martyred, he's brought to the tent. Imam, talking to him, tells him that, oh my son, can you speak to your mother and your father once more? This is something we don't see earlier then. Okay, Imam is turning to him and telling him, oh Ali, can you please speak to your mother? Your mother wants to talk to you, and your father. Okay, and then Ali Akbar sees himself on the lap of his father, and then he sees the crying of the mother and the sisters. Okay, this is, as I say, this is the first time we see the mention of a mother without the name Layla. Okay. Now, this was Mullah Kashifi. Now, he mentions another account, which again shows you the supernatural understanding he's sharing. As I'd mentioned, that he was somebody who was a mystic, he was a Sufi. So you will see these mystical and supernatural events being included in these narrative of his. So he says, there's another narrative which says that when Ali Akbar went to fight, Imam was watching him going to fight, and suddenly Ali Akbar disappeared from the vision of Imam alayhi salam. Okay, so Imam started crying out, Ali Akbar, and Ali Akbar would respond by saying, Father, save me, save me. And this is where now Imam goes in the direction of the sound. But as much as he goes, he doesn't find Ali Akbar. Okay, and he doesn't then receive any reply. So what the enemies had done is, what they basically did was they took Ali Akbar's horse and they took it in between in the midst of the enemy camp, and then they started hitting him the way they hit him. Okay, so now Imam is crying out, where are you, Ali Akbar? So there's no reply. Imam comes in between the battlefield, there's no reply. And then suddenly, now here is where again supernaturality comes in. Here where the horse turns towards the desert by itself. So Imam is trying to control it, the horse is uncontrollable. It's just moving itself towards the desert, towards where Ali Akbar was there, and Imam finds him. The horse was there without Ali Akbar. Okay? This is something which we didn't see even earlier. Now, this was early 10th century. Come to later 11th century now. Turayhi in his Muntakhab. Okay, so there's a book called Muntakhab al-Turayhi. So Turayhi, by the way, he is also attributed to have come up with this longer hadith kisa which we are reciting. Okay, so the shorter hadith kisa is something which is mutawatir and accepted by Shias and Sunnis. The longer version of Hadith al-Kisa, which we recite in our majalis and in our gatherings, is coming in the 11th century from Turayhi. Okay, and then later Sayyid Hashim al-Bahrani and all put it up further. But he is the one who is ascribed and attributed to have brought that Hadith al-Kisa. So in 1080 Hijrah, okay, so end of 11th Hijrah, he comes up now with a new narrative altogether. So the earlier narrative was that Ali Akbar was the first one from the Ahlul Bayt to be killed. The later version we saw in the 9th, 10th century is that Muthir al-Ahzan in the 8th, 7th century, where we saw that Ali Akbar was in the middle of the list. Okay, so some Ahlul Bayt had already passed away, and then he goes to the battlefield. Mullah Kashifi says Ali Akbar, Imam Hussein was remaining with his 3 sons only. Here now, Turayhi comes up with another narrative. He says, لما قتل العباس تدافعت الرجال على أصحاب الحسين. Okay, so when Abbas was killed now, so the enemy starts attacking the companions of Imam. Now, which companions we don't know, if everybody had died or no. What's Turayhi's opinion? We need to research on that, Turayhi's opinion. Okay, now here is where the time where Imam alayhi salam now calls out. Now we are used to listening this for Ali Asghar. Okay, Imam makes this call according to Turayhi after the death of Hazrat Abbas. Okay, he turns back and says, "Ama min mujirin yujiruna, ama min mughithin yughithuna." These are statements we had heard about Ali Asghar, which we will come discuss later. Imam comes and says that, is there somebody to help us? Okay, is somebody there to protect us? Now everybody has died. Can you come and help us? And then, "Ama min ahadin ya'tina bi sharbatin min al-ma." Can somebody bring water for us? We are thirsty. And then this child is looking for water. Okay, so apparently the child and the infant, which we will discuss as we go further. Now, Turayhi's version is فَقَامَ إِلَيْهِ وَلَدُهُ الْأَكْبَرُ. Here is where Hazrat Ali Akbar stands up now. He says, وَكَانَ لَهُم مِّنَ الْعُمْرِ السَّبْعَ عَشَرَ سَنَةً. So another narrative now. So 17 years was not heard of, 19 we heard, 20 plus we heard. Now another narrative comes in that he was 17 years old. Okay, but look at the context. Imam is asking for help, nobody's there. Imam is asking for water. Turayhi says this is the time Ali Akbar stood up, and he tells the father, I will go take the water. So his father tells him, Imdi, barakallahu feek. My son, go, may Allah bless you. So he takes the water skin, and then he comes to the Euphrates, he comes to the river, fills the water, and comes back with the water also. وَأَقْبَلَ بِهَا نَحْوَ أَبِيهِ فَقَالَ يَا أَبَتِ الْمَاء لِمَنْ طَلَبَ. Okay, he brought the water for the people, and he tells his father, I brought water, please give it to everybody, give it to my younger son, give it to my younger brother also, and if water remains, give it to me also. Can you see this narrative all together, a separate different narrative coming in the 11th century? Okay, so now here now Imam starts giving water to Ali Asghar. So I'm using the word Ali Asghar. As we go further, we will then explain what the name and all whatnot. Okay, when Imam wants to give him, Imam takes the young child, wants to give him the water, and the arrow comes in for the bahahu. Okay, قبل أن يشرب من الماء, it hits him before he drinks the water. فبكى الحسين ورمى الركعة. Okay, Imam started crying and he threw the water skin and the water also went away. Okay, this is the narrative which Turayhi is proposing. And then he starts doing the dua, Allahumma anta shahid ala qawmin qatalu ashbah al-khalq binabiyyika wa habibika wa rasulik. Okay, this is Turayhi. Now, one more thing he adds. Now, if you notice in the earlier versions, when Imam Hussein came in the presence of Ali Akbar says, this is my grandfather, he's giving you salam. Here now, the names are increasing. So it's not only the Holy Prophet, it's Imam Ali, it's Bibi Fatima, and Bibi Khadija. 4 personalities are being mentioned. Ali Akbar is saying, I can see them. Okay? وَهُمْ إِلَيْكَ مُشْتَاقُونَ فَأَقْبِلِ الْحُسَيْنِ. Okay? He is waiting for you, they're waiting for you eagerly. Then Imam started crying out loudly. وَصَاحَ بِأَعْلَى صَوْتِهِ. He started crying out with his loud voice, and the women started crying and weeping also. So Imam now, this is something again we don't see in the earlier versions. أُسْكُتُنَّ فَإِنَّ الْبُكَاءَ أَمَامَكُنَّ. Okay, keep quiet, stay silent. There's a lot of crying you need to do up front. So stay silent for the time being. This is something which we don't see earlier. Okay, this was late 11th century. Come to earlier 12th century, this is where Allama Majlisi now comes in. Okay, he also apparently believes in that Ali Akbar went after Abbas. Okay, so he mentions Ali Akbar's death after Abbas's martyrdom. Now, he comes and supports that Mullah Kashif's version of 18 years, that Ali Akbar was 18 years, number one. And number two, then he quotes Ibn Shahr Ashub. Ibn Shahr Ashub was a 6th century scholar. He says he used to believe that Ali Akbar was 25 years old. So another narrative comes in now, okay? The 25-year-old. So we have seen different ages being mentioned for Ali Akbar till the age 25. Now, another thing which Allama Majlisi adds is something which you will notice now coming in the 12th century is the whole concept of istighatha now. Okay, and this is something which has become a controversy in the community. And I keep on claiming, this is my humble claim, that istighatha is a concept which is a very later concept. And you will notice the likes of Allama Majlisi, they quote a lot of narrations. The early narrations which are there in the books, okay? But you will notice that the narrators are very questionable. So the likes of Mufaddal bin Umar and them, who are questionable. Some would say the Ghalis also, okay? But they're questionable to the least. But you will notice the text and the concept of istighatha comes very later. And here now he includes this whole issue of istighatha. Apparently, Allama Majlisi believes that when he came to ask for water, Ali Akbar, it's as if he was doing istighatha to the Prophet and Imam Ali alayhi salam, that Baba, you give me water. So notice his words. يا بني يعز على محمد وعلى علي بن أبي طالب وعلى أن تدعوهم فلا يجيبك. Okay, you called upon the Prophet and you called upon Imam Ali alayhi salam to give you water, but they didn't help you. وتستغيث بهم فلا يغيثوك. You did istighatha to them, you sought help from them, and they didn't help you. Okay, now يا بني هات لسانك. Okay, now bring your tongue. And then Imam brings his tongue to him also. So this is a new narrative now, okay? So the whole narrative of istighatha was not there earlier. It's coming in the 12th century now. That Ali Akbar asking for water from the Prophet and Imam Ali alayhi salam. And then Imam tells him, because they didn't help you, okay, these are his wordings, huh? They didn't help you, فَلَا يُغِيثُوك. Now bring your tongue, and Imam puts his tongue, and then وَدَفَعَ إِلَيْهِ خَاتَمَهُ. And then he gave his ring to him, which we had seen earlier also, okay? That Imam gives his ring to him, and then he goes to fight, okay? This is Allama Majlisi in early 12th century. Now, another narrative which Allama Majlisi adds before him, which we didn't have, we had this فَقَطَعُوهُ بِأَسْيَافِهِمْ, which was Abu Mikhnaf's version, that they cut him with their swords. He now adds فَقَطَعُوهُ بِسُيُوفِهِمْ إِرْبًا إِرْبًا. This is something we didn't see earlier. Okay, and that's why I'd say that the narrative will increase. They cut him with their swords into pieces. Okay, you want to say pieces, you want to say into whatever. But irban, irba. Okay, something we don't see it earlier than that. Okay, now, then we come to 13th, end of 13th century Hijrah, 1297 Hijrah. You have a book by the name of Nasikh al-Tawarikh, written by Sipair, Muhammad Taqi Sipair, was an Iranian. Again, he claims in the introduction to the book, if you read, you will notice he says that I'm collecting everything in the book so that you don't need any historical text anymore. Okay? So now, he is proposing the same thing, that there was nobody remaining with Imam Hussein after Hazrat Abbas. So Imam Hussein was alone after the martyrdom of Hazrat Abbas, and it was only Ali Akbar remaining in the end. So it was now Imam Hussein and Hazrat Ali Akbar remaining in the end. Again, he promotes also the 18-year-old, and then he discusses, he quotes Muawiyah and talks about the bravery of Hazrat Ali Akbar. Okay, so one more thing now we see in this 13th century is now imagination start coming in. Okay, so the description he's giving of the fight of Ali Akbar is something which we don't see it earlier, that he fought like Imam Ali alayhi salam. He was karrar, he was غير فرار. Okay, so he was فكان كأنه الكرار بيده ذو الفقار. Okay, so he's describing his fight and comparing it to Imam Ali alayhi salam, something which we didn't see earlier. So imaginations now are coming up here now, that he is fighting so bravely. The way he is fighting like Imam Ali. وهو يقاتل القاسطين في سفين. Okay, it's as if Imam Ali is fighting in the battlefield of Siffin. وكأنه الذئب. Okay, it's like a wolf plunging in within the horde of the flock of the sheep. Okay, this is how he's describing the fight of Ali Akbar, something which we don't see earlier. Okay, now another thing which we see now in Nasikh al-Tawarikh is the whole issue of at the time of the death and the martyrdom of the last moments of Ali Akbar. What does he see? In the earlier narrations, we saw that he saw the Prophet. In later narrations, we saw that he saw the four personalities. Here now, it's further than that. He says, "Ara abwab as-sama qad infatahat." Okay, I can see that the heaven is opening up for me. The huris are coming down for me. Okay, and then I'm being told, get into the paradise. Something which we didn't have earlier. Okay, but one thing he tells his father, something again we didn't see in the earlier narrative. Usika bihaula in niswa. Oh my father, I am advising you to take care of these ladies. Okay, nobody should strike them. La yakhmishna ala wajhaha ala wajhan. Okay. They should not be hurt and they should not be hit on their faces. Okay, something which we don't see earlier. Do you get me? Okay, this was 13th century. 14th century now, you have a book called Ma'ali al-Sibtain. Okay, it's written by a person named Mazin Darani. He was born in 1300 Hijrah. Okay, now it's the first time you see the name of Layla coming up. Okay, so in the 10th century, we saw the word mother coming up. Before that, we didn't see the mother coming up, but it's become a mainstream understanding that the mother was there in Karbala and all whatnot. Where is the mother coming up from? Notice now, this is the dua of the mother written in a 14th century book. Okay, فَلَمَّا خَرَجَ إِلَيْهِ اللَّعِينُ تَغَيَّرَ وَجْهُ الْحُسَيْنِ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ. So when this person from the enemy came to fight Ali Akbar, apparently he was a very brave warrior, Imam's face changed. So فَقَالَتْ أُمُّهُ لَيْلَى or Layli, whatever the name. Okay, you notice this is the first time the name Layla is coming up. She turns to Imam Hussein alayhi salam and says that what has happened to my son? So he turns back and says, I've heard from the Prophet that the dua of the mother is accepted. Go do dua for her. So فَكَشَفَتْ رَأْسَهَا وَدَعَتْ لَهُ. She opened up her head, her veil or whatever, and she started praying for her. These are the words he has used, okay? And then the dua is also mentioned. This is the first time now that dua is also mentioned. Ya Radda Yusuf ala Yaqub and all that. This dua is also mentioned. This is the first time we are seeing this dua being mentioned, okay? And then finally, Mazin Darani quotes one more thing which we don't see earlier, okay? And that is that when Imam Hussein alayhi salam was bidding farewell to Ali Akbar, it was as if he was in the state of dying. Okay? And this is something we don't see earlier. That he says that قد احتضر وأشرف على الموت ثلاث مرات. Okay? He almost died on 3 occasions for his son. Can you see this? Okay? So as if when he was bidding farewell, as if he died. Okay, and he's quoting Allama Sheikh Tustari. This is what Mazin Darani is quoting in the 14th century, as if Imam wants to die, and he is before bidding farewell to his son. Now, I'm sorry, my time has I really exceeded time today, but let me finish this. What I did was to come and show you what is happening even in the contemporary world. There's a master's dissertation written by a student named Abul Fadl Khisal. He has written a master's dissertation which was 5 years ago, 1441 Hijrah. He compares, what he does, it's a beautiful, again, that's a whole series of lectures apparently by itself. What he does is that he is comparing lectures of 5 speakers, okay, scholars, and their lectures. He has transcribed them all, and then he has taken 5 transcripts from the Nawha Khans, the way we have Marsiya Khan and Nawha Khan. Now in Iran and in Iraq, you are aware that the Maulanas recite Masa'ib very short, okay, 2-3 minutes the Maulana would recite. The major Masa'ib and Musibah comes from the Nawha Khans. Okay, it's opposite in our world, where the Maulanas recite more. There it's the Nawha Khan who recites. So the criteria now becomes the Nawha Khan, the one who's reciting the elegies or eulogies, whatever, I forget the word which has been used. Okay, they are the criteria for the Masa'ib which comes in. So I've picked up on one person, who Nawha Khan, who is very famous, who is known even in our world. His name is Mahdi Rasuli. His famous Nawha Kema Tasbih Zahra, for those of you who are, he's very famous in our world. But the researcher now, these are not my words, this is his words, the one who writes this dissertation, he says he's so popular within the Iranian community, but he's the one who is using the less reliable sources. Rather, sometimes he even makes up his own stuff. So look at what he does, okay? Very quickly, and I finish. So it's the first time, now this is in the current period, the 15th century Hijrah we're living in. This is a Musibah being recited in this period. It's totally different narrative from all what we have heard. Look at what comes out. The ladies start crying, okay? Lady Sakina's name comes up for the first time now. Okay, Lady Sakina sat up and saw that she was more anxious than anyone else. So when Ali Akbar wanted to bid farewell, she was the most anxious and she was the most sad from all. Her name comes up, which was not there earlier in any of the narratives. Okay, and then the same narrative that the ladies hold back to Ali Akbar so that he shouldn't go. Again, Ali Akbar turns back to the aunt Zainab, that please, can you separate these ladies from me? So Zainab turns to Sakina, the name comes back again, which was not there earlier. Sakina, come to my side, okay? Let your brother go, okay? And then he's separated from all. And then he goes to the tent and he stands towards the Qibla. This is Ali Akbar, again, we didn't see that earlier. He stands towards the Qibla and then he moves and then he decides to move towards, the battlefield. Okay, now, as we go further, when he comes out of the tent again, now this is something again we didn't see this. He comes out of the tent, the ladies and the children hold him back again, that don't go, please don't go. And this is the time Imam Hussein then comes and tells them, leave him, because the ladies were like, who are you leaving us with? If you go away, who will protect us and all whatnot? These are statements we didn't see them earlier. Now Imam Hussein alayhi salam then comes and tells them that let Ali go, and then the children felt ashamed and that to obey, and they let Ali go. Okay. Now another narrative, another thing which we see again, this is something you will see this in the current times also, and that is analysis being added to the Masaib. Now, as I mentioned, that do we have pure history or do we have the narrative of the narrator and the one who is reading the narration? Okay, so look at what he's saying. So what he's saying is, Mahdi Rasuli is saying this, that yes, scholars do say that Ali Akbar came to ask for water. So he says, I don't believe that Ali Akbar actually was thirsty. These are his words. Okay. Notice these are his words. آقا گفت here بابا من تشنه‌ام باور کن من میگویم این نبوده بعید است که از علی بیاید بگوید بابا تشنه‌ام. Okay, his language is very street language because he's speaking to a common crowd. It's very improbable that Ali is telling his father that I'm thirsty. Rather, what was then? Why did he say I'm thirsty? Rather, Ali wanted to meet his father once again, and the father wanted to meet him again, and that is why Ali Akbar said that I am thirsty. Okay. So this whole issue about asking for water and all this was all about meeting once again, and that separation was killing them all together. Then he mentions, he puts his lips and into the lips of Ali Akbar and all that. That is something which again we have heard that in the earlier narratives also. Now, one more thing he adds is that he's speaking to his father now. He tells his father, Father, I will not go back to the tent because I can't go back to the tent and the ladies will start wailing and weeping and all that. I will go back from here only towards the battlefield. Okay. Now here there's a long description of how Imam is now looking at Ali Akbar. Okay. So Imam is like, oh Ali, he keeps on wiping his eyes, tears don't come on my face because you are blocking my view from Ali. And these are all statements he's bringing them. Now, are these imaginative statements? Is this what he believes? I don't know. Okay, but this is something which he mentions. And then Abbas approaches Imam Hussein alayhi salam and says, what is happening and all what, there's a discussion between them also. Okay. Now, one more thing which he adds again, something which again we didn't see this, and this is what I'm trying to say, that the evolution is very huge. Imam is looking at Ali Akbar, he's telling Bibi Zainab what's happening, and then he's telling them to pray for him. So the children start praying. Okay, he says, وَإِن يَكَادُ, they started reciting وَإِن يَكَادُ, that famous verse which is recited for evil eye. The children started reciting that. Nothing, we don't see this in the earlier narratives. He mentions that they start reciting that. Okay, so this is another, we are making another so that he can come back safe. Suddenly, okay, now here is where Ali Akbar now is hit and he's almost on the verge of the martyrdom. And now again, they would hit him and he would say, ah, ya Zahra, ya Zahra. Okay, this is something again, is it imaginative or something which he believes it's there? He was crying out to Bibi Zahra alayhi salam. Okay, this is something we don't see in the earlier narratives, and until he falls on the earth. Now, in the earlier narratives, all of them were unanimous that only Imam Hussein alayhi salam came to Ali Akbar and Bibi Zainab. Here now he says Hazrat Abbas also comes together, something we don't see in the earlier narratives. Okay, he then, I don't know, he's imagining or he's mentioning what he believes in, I don't know. He starts mentioning that the Imam puts first the head of Ali Akbar on his thighs, but he doesn't feel that peace in within him, and then he puts his head on his chest, he doesn't feel the peace in within him, and then starts putting his cheek on his cheek. Okay, when he's done that, so when he's putting his cheek on the cheek of Akbar alayhi salam, Abbas alayhi salam rushes towards the tents, and he's going to Bibi Zainab and telling her, now this is something again we didn't see earlier, that he tells her that Imam Hussein is also passed away. And you see this was something which was not there. He now brings it up in the 15th century. Okay, he comes and tells his aunt that not only Ali Akbar has passed away, but also Imam Hussein alayhi salam has also passed away. And the similar version also, Shimr is passing to his army. The give me glad tidings, I've killed 2 people together. Nothing we heard this earlier. This is something we hear in the 15th century for the first time. Okay, so Zainab turns back to Abbas and tells Abbas, what are you doing here? Go back, that's your duty. Stand up by Hussein alayhi salam. Okay, and then Zainab comes to him and then she cries out, but he doesn't stand up. Okay, so she drops herself on the floor, and that's the time where Imam Hussein stands up and starts moving. Okay, now strangely, when he stands up, Zainab tells him that, okay, stand up, let's go. He starts moving, but instead of moving to the tents, he moves towards the other side. Okay, ye dafe Zainab did Hussein darad ishtibahi miravad. She asks, Kuja miravi khayme azin taraf ast. Okay, can you see this? This is a narrative which we don't see at all earlier. that Imam Hussein had passed out, and then Bibi Zainab comes up and she wakes him up, and then Imam Hussein now is standing up. He doesn't realize where is he going. He goes towards the opposite side, and Bibi Zainab has to tell her that go on this side and all whatnot. Okay, I just felt I should mention this to show you how the narrative has evolved from the 2nd century all the way from to the 15th century. I'm sorry, I took a bit of your time. I really had to rush quickly on these issues, but I felt I had to mention as much as I could so that you get a clearer picture of what's happening. In conclusion, again, I want to stress on this issue again that I'm not up for saying what is the right and what is wrong, what is reliable, what is not reliable. That's upon you to go find out what is reliable and what is not. I'm just showing you the evolution of this narrative of Hazrat Ali Akbar. Let's pray to Allah. Allah give us the tawfiq to be able to understand the reality the way it is. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.